All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the HBCU Sports YouTube channel. And I'm joined by a very special guest today. His team opens the season Monday evening against Washington Adventists. They have been picked to win the MEAC for the third time in 4 years. It is my honor to have Norfolk State men's basketball coach Robert Jones joining us today. Coach, how you doing?
Hey, how you doing, man? What's going on?
Pretty good. So, just looking back on what you've been able to accomplish with this program, and even though you only had one guy on all conference team, you guys are still picked to be at the top of the heap. What does that say about what you've been able to build with this program in Norfolk State?
Well, we actually had two guys. We had two on the third team. We had
Okay.
Keontae Lewis and Anthony McComb. But even with that being said, it's still two on the third team, right? So it's just like I told you guys. I don't know if we necessarily deserve to be picked number one this year. With us only returning 5% of our scoring, and only three guys that played very, 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 very limited minutes. But I just told the guys that we were picked number one because of what people have done before them. About what all the Joe Bryants and the Chris Bankstons and then those guys have set the precedence to say that Norfolk State could be finished number one because really, like I said, we don't really deserve to be picked number one preseason wise. Even if you look at the like you said the preseason stuff is that we got two guys on third team, right? Um, I think Coppin has three guys total, but they got picked last. Like that don't this is like all that stuff doesn't really even make sense. So it doesn't make sense. So we'll see how the season goes, and let's just say that if they we got picked one, we hope to finish one. I will say that, but at the same time, it's just a lot about what has come before this team and the precedent that's already been set.
This is a very competitive league. I think people kind of sleep on the MEAC because it is an HBCU conference, but anybody who watched the tournament in Norfolk last year saw a lot of heavy action. Just what are you hoping to impress upon this team? Obviously, you have your non-conference schedule ahead of you, but what do you want to impress upon this team once you get into MEAC play, understanding that any given night, it could not be your night?
Well, we've been talking about that now, even in non-conference play, because the thing that we said is once again because of teams that have come before this team. Even in non-conference, no one's just overlooking Norfolk State at this point. It's like every magazine that's come out, like I said, whether fair or unfair, every single publication that's come out has had us picked number one. Is I mean everything from the MEAC, the official MEAC rankings to different Twitter platforms to different magazines like Lindy and stuff. Reputable magazines. There's never been there hasn't been one publication that said Norfolk State isn't going to be picked number one. So there's a lot of pressure on the guys, and I think that even in the non-conference, other teams see it. Usually, as you probably know, every year we have a couple signature non-conference wins, and I think that teams this year, they're looking forward to us from tomorrow with Washington Adventists all the way through the end of the non-conference schedule before we even get to conference. But once we get to conference, it's really going to be like a dogfight because of the record that we've established over the course of my tenure there. We've been beating people a lot, for a long time, and I think everybody, always wants to get a piece of you. So every game is like a championship game when we play, somebody. So I think that the guys got to understand that, and with having 11 new guys, I don't think everybody fully understands that yet.
Mhm.
But I think they will very shortly understand that.
And you mentioned that because you've been very outspoken about with respect to the portal and NIL and different things of that nature. Just from your perspective, just how difficult is it to sort of have to restock the cupboard year after year after year? Because I think the last 2 years you've lost the conference player of the year to the portal. Just how difficult is it for you and your staff to just not only identify good talent but have the energy to go out and attract that talent?
Yeah, Chris. It's probably more of having the energy to try to do it year in and year out. Because
Yeah.
even last year, we lost the national mid-major player of the year, Brian Moore, to Grand Canyon. So that the national mid-major player of the year was a Norfolk State, in the Norfolk State uniform, and we lost him. So to have the energy to keep doing it year in and year out. Honestly, I'm not that old yet, but I can see why some of the older coaches are retiring and said enough of
Yeah.
this nonsense because it's like when you're 65, 70 years old, it's like why do you want to keep doing this year in and year out? So it's definitely becoming tougher. I think for us, the main thing we try to identify is And I know it might sound very basic, but it's like guys who can play. Like you got to identify
Right.
guys who can play. And then, the second piece of it that people try to avoid sometimes, but it's the truth though, is that depending on what your NIL or your revenue share budget is, or if you have one, you gotta get guys who can play and guys who you can afford. Because there's some
Right.
guys that you could that can play that you just can't afford. So you got to find like the happy medium between both in order to keep having a successful basketball program.
Also, last year that I found it interesting that when you guys had finished the MEAC schedule, you were really adamant about getting a fair seating.
Hmm.
And of course, you probably heard by now that they're probably trying to expand this tournament from 68 to 76 for some unforeseen reason. Just if that does happen, and it probably will, how much more difficult does that make it for you, coaches in the SWAC, and other HBCU coaches who have designs on winning conference championships and making the NCAA tournament? Just how much more difficult do you think that makes your guys' job to identify talent, pull all this talent together, and then try to get to the NCAA tournament?
I'm not quite sure if it makes it more difficult, but I think that because it's difficult anyway, right now. But I do think that hopefully, and it probably won't happen, but you will hope with maybe expanding the tournament. Maybe one day there will be more than one HBCU that goes from each conference because there's more slots. But as we probably know, those slots that they're expanding are going to go to the Power Four teams, though.
Yeah.
Like we already
Hmm.
already know what that's going to be. So we're still probably going to be in a one big conference, But at the same time, last year I was upset about the seed because I felt like we won 24 games, which is a hell of a lot of games in college basketball. We beat High Point, which was I think the number 13 seed. We also who did we beat? We beat the SWAC champion, the Alabama State, and we beat them pretty good. So we had like resume wins over tournament teams, and it was another team too. I forgot what it was, but we should have been higher. And I'm not saying we should have been a 10 seed or anything like that, but you can't justify. Well, I guess NCAA, according to them, you can't justify it. It's like, if we beat a 13 seed and at their place, then how are we a 16 seed?
Right.
Like that basic math is not mathing. Let's just say that. But they gave us a 16 seed and we played the eventual national champion. And I guess if there's any consolation prize, then nobody beat Florida that tournament, including us. So if there's a consolation prize, I guess we lost to the national champion. But I think that we should have never played Florida to begin with.
So getting back to this year, what has preseason practice been like? How have the guys been, responding? Because obviously it's first day of school vibes. You got the name tags and everything going on. Make sure everybody knows who everybody is. Just how have these guys responded to your coaching, and what do you think? Where do you put this team as you get ready to open your season? Like, what's your summary of this team? What do you think they look like as you get ready to open it up?
This is the biggest level of uncertainty I've probably had in my career. Even like my first year as a head coach, um, it might have been uncertainty about how to handle some situations, but I know the team was going to be solid, with the players that we had. But this year, this has probably been the toughest preseason I've had, the toughest summer that I've had, because it's just trying to really mesh these guys. It's so many different personalities, trying to get everybody on the same page. There's so many different programs that people have come from. Some successful programs, some were losing programs. So it's like trying to get the losing program kids to understand what it is to have the expectations of us finishing first. So that's a task in itself. Forget about the X and O stuff. That's a mindset change, right? Like you can go from like a program that won 8 games when we're trying to win 8 games the first month. And it's like
Right.
people don't they can't understand that to a certain extent that there's a higher level expectation here. So between trying to get a mindset change, trying to mesh, like I said, 15 personalities, it's definitely been difficult. It's definitely been difficult. And I've said it before on different things that I give JUCO coaches even more respect now than maybe I used to. And I said I didn't respect them, but I respect what they do now more because they have to do this every year almost. Like they'll have kids who come in and almost a whole new team every year, when you're in JUCO. So it's like for us, this is definitely a different landscape. Hopefully we'll get the same results that we've been getting, but I definitely I would say that, I'm a New Yorker, and New Yorkers, we like to talk a little trash now, what I'm saying? But it's like I haven't really said much this year yet about this team because we're still trying to figure it out.
Are there any players that have stood out to you in camp? Anybody you're expecting anything from as the season starts?
Yeah, I would say Anthony McCone, who transferred in from New Hampshire. I know he's the highest uh, points per game Division I transfer that came into the MEAC. He averaged 13 last year at New Hampshire. So that's a pretty solid number Division I wise. But once again, he's one of those kids that they only won like 8 games last year. So it's like him, we're trying to get him to mesh his talents, his scoring talent, into a winning culture. So that's been a little challenge. But he's a great kid, so he's coming along. He understands, and everything should be fine. But he stood out. A guy from last year who is looking to make a big jump, Jordan Leaks. He only averaged 1.9 for us last year, but now with opportunity presenting itself a little bit more, we expect him to be in a starting role probably for us. So he stood out, and another young man, point guard, who was like one of our last gets this year. He's a freshman, Adrian Newton, and I know the word freshman is sometimes taboo in this day and age, but he's actually turned out to be like probably our best point guard, honestly. And it's a blessing that we were able to get him late and have him because he definitely shores up that position for us a lot. Obviously he's going to be thrown into the fire a lot as a freshman, and we're going to have to live with some of his mistakes. But at the same time, I do think that he's going to be like, by the time conference season comes, he'll be a really good play for us. So those guys have stood out, and probably Keontae Lewis too. Keontae Lewis, who's preseason all third team, he's doing pretty well too. Transfer from Wagner, 6'9", transfer from Wagner. So there's a couple guys that stand out, but the thing I say, Chris, is that like no one's really separating themselves, and that's probably the hardest part for me as a coach trying to figure out a rotation is that I know I can't play 14 people, but at the same time, what 10 do I play because no one's really separating themselves like that. So it's going to be just guys better sit closer to the front of the bench so I can see you first because it's like almost like whoever I see is who's going in the game. And so you better sit close to the front of the bench because there's nobody like really separating themselves.
And I'll get you out of here on this note. What do you want to be able to say about this team come March of 2026?
Say March of 2026, you said?
Yeah.
What I would like to say is that we're champions. That's the ultimate goal. I would like to say that we're a regular season champion and tournament champion. I think that a lot of times, we want to be selfish with that. We want to try to get both, championships. So we want to do that. The next thing I'll say is that it'll be a bunch of basically a bunch of strangers that came together for a common goal, and that's what we are right now. With so many new people, we're a bunch of strangers. But if we could come together for the common goal of a championship, that'll be a very, very rewarding year. And like I told my coaches is that if or when I'm gonna put it in the air, we're able to get a championship. This will probably be the most rewarding championship because of the nature of this team and the nature of the business right now. So hopefully we can conquer that goal this year, and we're working every day to try to get that.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is Norfolk State men's basketball coach Robert Jones. The Spartans open up their season Monday night at 7 o'clock.
Yep.
Against Washington Adventist. Coach Jones, we thank you so much for your time and best of luck this year.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate you, man.